Previously on college football. 134 teams. Only 12 have proven they have what it takes to take on the very best in the college football gauntlet. Which one will reign supreme?
The largest. Been stepping up since my mama stayed in them apartments. Regardless, my daddy told me keep the heat even when I'm in foreigns. I'm heartless, cause these niggas is hating on me just because I'm the biggest. The largest, the biggest, the largest. 30K on my wrist for hard times. These niggas just mad cause they bitching my archives. Jordan came back on the 4-5. If you play then you lay right there by your own kind. Pull up a 4 in a loco. Tell them run this bitch back like so-so. Got this rap shit here in the chokehold. Did a show out in Austin. Shout out to Bobo. Moved out the trenches, now look how we live. Turn my BM to furnish the crib. Walk out the mall with some shoes for the kids. Deposit the checks from my bank full of M's. Paid on my rent, now I'm up for the year. The view look crazy from here. What I paid for some dogs could've bought me veneers. Texas piece on my neck could've bought your career. Safe to say I'm the big.
Welcome back to the Through the Lane podcast, and today we're going to talk about really just the college football playoffs. Hope everyone's having wonderful holidays. This will probably be the only episode before Christmas. I don't know if we'll have one till the week after, just to have time off. But I wanted to record this today because of everything that happened this weekend, which was very eventful. And the fact that was the first time the 12-team playoffs started. Everybody, there was really no close games. All the home teams won. And a lot of people are upset. And I want to start off by saying the committee got it right. Like, everyone's saying the committee got it wrong. The committee got it wrong. No, they got it right. I mean, the only argument you could have would, I guess, be SMU or Indiana for South Carolina or a Miami. Not Ole Miss, not Alabama. Because those are teams that lost their 3 games down the stretch. South Carolina lost their games to start the season and then got on as it went on. People wanted to put Alabama in because of the name. It's Alabama. It's what happened a few years ago. Just because I think actually last year is because the name. You want to put Ole Miss in because it's the SEC team. The head coach is Lane Kiffin when they beat Georgia. Right? You want it. That's not fair. So. I'm going to start off by saying, Indiana, look, I know Indiana crapped the bed, and I'm going to explain what really happened with these 2 games with Indiana and SMU. But they did everything they can. You can't fault Indiana for their conference being terrible. You can't. Like, they did everything they were supposed to. They blew out teams. Their one loss was an Ohio State team, which after this past weekend may be a great loss, like a team losing to Georgia. You're like, okay, well... Like Texas, okay? Before this weekend, you look at Texas, what have they done? They beat everybody but a ranked team, right? And they got kind of beat at home, 32 to 15, at home by Georgia, the only ranked team they played. The only difference between them and Indiana is, Indiana was at Ohio State beat. It's because it's Indiana, and Indiana's never that good. Texas is kind of like a blue-blooded college football. So we look at them differently. But if you put them side to side, there's no real difference. They didn't really beat anybody up until this weekend. They lost at home to Georgia. At least Indiana lost away at Ohio State. And Texas was in the playoffs last year. So you look at that and you're like, well, Texas should be better. They had a Heisman candidate coming in the year in Quinn Ewers. What are you going to say about Indiana? This thing, Indiana should have been in. We needed Kurt Herbstreit saying, stop looking at wins. Why? Now, I think ultimately we need to get to the process that happens with the college basketball tournament. But as of right now, the Indiana did everything they needed to get in. They beat everybody they're supposed to. Yes, they lost to Ohio State. And yes, it's a bit of an ugly win or ugly loss. But again, it's the first year of this program being, good. Because they haven't been good, somewhat decent since Michael Penix. They lose to Ohio State 15-38. They beat Michigan, who beats Ohio State. They blow out Purdue. They beat Washington, who was in the Natty last year. They beat Michigan State. They beat Maryland. They beat Northwestern. They beat UCLA. And then, the 3 out of the first 4 games are cakewalks. But they beat everybody. They beat Nebraska. Everybody in the conference who was supposed to be good outside of Ohio State and Oregon, they beat Michigan, who was the national champion last year, right? They beat Washington, who was in the national championship last year. They beat Nebraska, who everyone was high on because of Dylan Raiola. They beat Northwestern, who's been a powerhouse. Or not powerhouse, but has been consistently good in every year in the conference. All right? What more? It's just because the conference had a bad year, you're looking to be like, oh, well, these teams are bad. On a normal year, beating Northwestern, Washington, and Michigan, and then occasionally Nebraska and Michigan State, you look great. The one loss to Ohio State, you're like, oh, okay. No, yes, it's not an SEC schedule, but that's still for them, usually beating those teams are good, but because it was a one-down year for the conference, everyone hates on Indiana, and because Curt Cignetti runs his mouth, and I think he should not run his mouth. Nick Saban called him out for it, but at the same time, what more did Indiana need to do? Did they have to go in and blow out Ohio State? If they had beat Ohio State closely, everyone would have been like, off game. Like, the goalpost was getting moved. Everyone was waiting for Indiana. And in this game, the second half played better. They lost 17-27. And I don't even think SMU or Indiana were the worst blowouts of the weekend. And I'll explain that in a minute, right? So total yards. They only got outgained by 100. Pretty much Notre Dame time controlled it more. They outthrew Notre Dame. Notre Dame had more penalties. I mean, really, and let's look at this, right? If Jeremiah Love does not break his 98-yard rushing touchdown, he has 7 carries for 10 yards. Right? If Javdarian Price does not break a 20-yard run, he has 10 carries for 12 yards. If Anais Williams does not have his 12-yard carry, he has 3 carries for 12 yards. Okay? And then Riley Leonard has 11 carries for 30 yards. And then Riley Leonard only throws for 201 with 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So again, they did not blow him out. Right? They had 2 explosive plays over 20 yards. They just got out-physicaled in the first half. Indiana in the second half outscored them 14-10. They just got outscored 17-3 in the first half because, again, like what happened in the Ohio State game, they got shell-shocked and things started coming at them quickly and they could not recover quick enough. And that's on Curt Cignetti. But also, we look at these teams that do a quick turnaround. Most teams like that aren't good. Colorado sucked last year. It took year 2 to be good. So for them to be this good already should be praised, and we should be happy that they're there. But this should not come as a surprise. Because, again, it's Curt Cignetti's first year. And I want to tell everybody that the James Madison teams were dominating in FCS when he had time. So just wait. This is a team... Indiana is a team that has recruiting power. Crap, they got Michael Penix at one point, and Ty Freifogel, and Jack Tootle. I know people who don't watch much college football don't know those names, but if you watch a lot of college football outside of Michael Penix, you know who these cats are. They can recruit. Right? So again, I hate this. Like, Notre Dame did not blow them out. It's 27-17. It is the closest game we had all weekend. But by the media, you would have no clue. No clue. I mean, looking at this here, this game was closer. It's just because Indiana had to make a push late in the game, and you can say, oh, Notre Dame took the... I hate when they say, well, they took the foot off the pedal, but it ended up being a 10-point game. Why did you take the foot off the pedal? Right? Again, this team, they were running the ball, but they weren't gashing them. Jeremiah Love, who I think is a phenomenal running back, was 8 carries for 108 yards. Looks great, right? His long carry was 98 yards. You take that away, it's 7 carries for 10 yards. A little over a yard a carry. Again, they did not gash anybody. And if you really want to take out the explosive plays, the 44-yard pass from Jordan Faison was the 44-yard catch. He's 6 for 45. Nothing that's going to blow you away. Hope you have 6, when you have 6 catches, you have 45 yards. So this notion of, again, Indiana should not have belonged. They got blown out. No, they didn't. Really, their blowout was not the worst of the weekend. It was not. Now, the Penn State game, I don't want to say this now. I think Tennessee had the worst blowout, but the Penn State game was up there. And Kevin Jennings did not look ready from the start. I mean, watching this game, because this was one of the only games I was able to watch all the way through, he just did not look good. All right? And looking at their schedule, again, they beat teams they're supposed to. They beat Florida State, who was undefeated last year. They beat TCU. They beat Louisville, who was in the conference championship last year. They beat a good Duke team. They beat a good Pittsburgh team. They beat a solid Boston College team. They barely lost to Clemson. And then they get beat out by Penn State. But looking at this game, I mean, Kevin Jennings, the 3 picks came in the first quarter. Right? And the wheels fell off quickly. When he threw that first pick 6, I looked at my brother and I said, it's over. Because it's a whiteout crowd. First off, this game being a noon game is an atrocity to college football. It shouldn't have been a noon game. But it was, right? So you look at that and you're just like, okay. And really, looking at these stats, I think, looking at this now, SMU had more, they got outran. The theme is running the ball. Teams that run the ball better win. But SMU outpassed the ball. That sounds very uneducated, but they struggled severely on third down, 3 of 14, compared to Penn State, 6 of 13. Penn State was about a 50% clip conversion rate. This is a team that gashed them. Now, this is different. They, bully balled them. Katron Allen, who I love, 11 carries, 70 yards. Nicholas Singleton, 14 carries, 90 yards. Drew Allard was 7 for 10. But Drew Allard, again, did not have a great game. 13 of 22 for 127 yards. Did not blow you away. But Kevin Jennings, he looked so flustered to start this game. And they said this happened before, and he caught his composure. But it was like he was missing guys. There was one, I think it's the second or third one. I think it might be the third one. That one, you can blame on the conditions, right? Because he's trying to loft it, and the ball doesn't sail as far as he wants it to. Underthrows it, picked off. The first one, trying to throw it to the receiver, like I think it's pass pro, comes out. The receiver hasn't even begun to turn his head. He just did his break. And as he's breaking, I mean, because there's a linebacker right there. So I guess he assumes he's not getting the ball unless it's coming over here. He's not even aware. Kevin Jennings throws the ball, and it's not even like on him here, like on his inside shoulder or his back. It is out in the middle to the middle linebacker, gets picked off, gets brought back to the house. I mean, that is a bad play. Like, I know, like, anticipation's huge and stuff with the quarterbacks. But that was bad because you didn't even put it on him to hit the guy. It hit the middle linebacker in the middle. Now, I forget what the second one was. Trying to find it here. Because, again, Kevin Jennings, he just looks so flustered, man. I mean, it just did not look good for him. Because everyone says he's a Heisman candidate next year. He did not look good. I mean, he's got to play better. The second one was when he tried to loft it over, and he just didn't put enough mustard on it. And I think that can be attributed to the weather, because it was like 13 degrees. Okay? Now this third pick. They are in the red zone. They're about to score. It's only 14-0. Ball gets tipped. And again, so the outside of the first two, the ball getting tipped in the third one, can't help that. I mean, he had the slant route, right? Looking at this, the slant route is open. But now, that second angle they give you, he should not have thrown that because the guy's sitting there in his front of his eyes, like just broken down. But again, it just like when it rained, it poured. Kevin Jennings could not uplift him out of the hole. I think this was more SMU throwing than it was Penn State, because looking at Penn State, outside of the rushing attack, they didn't blow you away. They had short fields because of the turnovers. You take away the 14 points off of pick sixes, it's 10-24. This is, again, a lot closer game. You take away that third interception that they go down and score on, you take away 21 points. It's 17-10. Again, really close game. I mean, the game for SMU fell apart in the second quarter. They kept it tied in the second half. Again, but with Indiana and SMU, the first half is where they lost it. The second half, they played pretty well. Indiana played better than Notre Dame in the second half. SMU played as even, but they still got blown out because they could not handle it in the first half. Playing in Penn State, I think Penn State doesn't get enough credit. The whiteout is probably the best home field advantage outside of Neyland. And maybe Ohio State on a good day, or Michigan. Because, it's a whiteout. The videos from that, stadium polls for the NCAA game came from that. Came from it. I think it's so underrated, and that's why I say it's atrocity that it was a noon game, because at night it would have been worse. But you put an ACC school that's not played many big games, and you throw them into that area, and it's whiteout. By all means, it's up in the air. You could tell Kevin Jennings was flustered. But again, I don't think it was the worst blowout of the weekend. Now, next to the closest game, and so far, Notre Dame's going to play Georgia, and we'll break this down probably in the next episode. And Penn State's going to play Boise State. And those are going to be some good games. Again, but I think Boise State, Penn State is going to be like how it was with the other three games outside of Texas and Clemson, where it's either going to be really good or Penn State's going to blow them out. It's going to be one of the two. But Clemson, Texas, before I get to the atrocity that happened with Tennessee. Clemson played pretty well. They went up 7-0, and then Texas scored 21 straight, right? And it was mainly built off the back, and again, outrunning the other team. 292 yards rushing compared to 76. When you can run the ball, so far, we've seen this trend, you can dominate the game. Because Archie Manning did not have a great game. He got outplayed by Cade Kubiak. But Phil Maffa only had 2 carries. I mean, the running back, they split it up between 4 backs. Phil Maffa fallen off this year compared to the year he had last year. But again, I mean, TJ Moore for Clemson had a great game. And I mean, it felt a lot closer than a 14-point game. Everyone wants to look at the box score and be like, oh my goodness. But okay. This game felt closer than the Indiana Notre Dame game. This game felt close. This game felt the closest, the closest game we had all weekend, because you knew it could switch so quickly, right? And I mean, Jaden Blue, who had been, deemed the starting running back to come into the year, had a good year last year as the backup, and then Wisner takes it over. I mean, played pretty well, showed his potential, and then Wisner, I mean, I think he's a sophomore. Almost 1,000 yards rushing. He's been the saving grace for this team because Blue missed time earlier. C.J. Baxter has not come back from injury. Jarrett Gibson, a freshman, looks like he'll be good in the future. But Gunnar Helm played well. This game, I think, was more about Clemson in that front seven. Surprisingly shocking, being unable to stop the run, because you have R.J. Mickens, Wade Woodass, Barrett Carter, Peter Woods. With the latter two being guys that are going to play on Sundays, not being able to stop the run at all and getting gashed. And again, this is a trend we saw all weekend. This game was probably the least controversial game because it felt closer. It just felt closer. Now, on to, I think, what was the worst game of the weekend, just because Tennessee looked so lifeless and got their ass beat from beginning to end. Or that's the only way you can characterize it, right? Because with SMU, they at least held it close, held it even the second half. Indiana outscored Notre Dame in the second half. Tennessee just got, BTA'd from beginning to end. Ohio State jumps out to a 21-0 lead in the first quarter. Right? Just because, for whatever reason, Dylan Simpson does not play. Right? Nico has to carry the ball 20 times. You give it to a freshman, Peyton Lewis, who really does not get these 10 carries till late in the game when it's over. Right, Deshaun Bishop, they really just got away from the run and said, Nico, you're just going to be the main quarterback. Dylan Sampson's talking about how healthy he feels coming into this game. And 104 yards. They had 252 yards of total offense, 104 yards passing. Nico was 14 of 31. I said this all year long. This team was overrated. Overrated. When they played big games outside of Alabama, and they were trailing for three quarters of the game, and it's at home. Right? So, you knew being down 7-0 because this elite front seven is going to keep you in the game. They finally show a pulse. But, again, they hadn't showed real offensive juggernaut outside of beating trash all year long. All year long. So, again, when they played Georgia, got beat. They got showed up by Arkansas because the offense, again, became anemic. And, again, they play Ohio State. And you say Dylan Sampson is not going to play, right? But Nico is supposed to be the future. Second coming to best they've had since Peyton Manning. And this was the worry with them all along. They don't have a top receiver. And the reason it gets me so much is because I live here and I hear all about how the Tennessee hype train. We have Squirrel Wright, Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton, Chris Brazzell. What they do. This game. Because, we're looking at this, the passing game should be better under Josh Heupel. It's been underwhelming all year. You got outplayed by Will Howard. Because I kind of favored Tennessee in this game because Ohio State did not play good against Michigan. Nico, I think, is better than Will Howard. Dylan Sampson, I don't know why he didn't play. And if you're punishing him, you picked the worst time to. It's dumb. Don't let him play the first quarter, but that's it. And this elite front seven, they had 156 yards ran against them. Travion Henderson was just running up and down the field. Jeremiah Smith, the freshman, was having himself a game. I'm at work watching this game, right? And every time I look down, it's 10, 15-yard pass completion to him or Emeka Egbuka, which Emeka Egbuka did a great job of boosting his draft stock. So did JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. Because I wasn't big on those guys, but they played up against an SEC front and showed out. They wrecked the game. 4 sacks. How many sacks did this elite front seven of Tennessee have? 0. We saw this again. They only took advantage of Alabama, but again, Alabama, very queasy. They didn't take advantage of Georgia. Didn't really take advantage of Arkansas. Again, this front seven that looked good against Kent State, Chattanooga, did not show out when needed to. When your offensive game is struggling, what do you lean on most? The defense. The defense did not show up. And this is a group which I think, before this game, I had a lot of faith in this team moving forward. Next year, I thought they were a national championship contender because Nico has so much talent. Dylan Sampson's probably going to declare. It wouldn't shock me if he stayed, but his value's at an all-time high. With what we saw with Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State, you've got to go. But you still have Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis. But again, you need a top receiver. You've got a bunch of 2s and 3s who cannot take over a game on this receiving corps. And they haven't gotten anybody in the portal. They haven't recruited anybody. So, again, it showed out. And this line is going to lose some guys. This defensive front is going to lose guys. So, again, this isn't a group where you're looking at a lot of young talent behind them being like, man, we're going to be really good. This looked bad. This exposed Tennessee. I think, because if it was from wire to wire, at no point, yes, the second quarter, they scored 10 points uninjured. Right? And that's mainly because Will Howard throws a pick, and I think there's a fumble at some point. There's a pick, and then they go 3 and out, and, the momentum switches, right? And you're like, okay, 21-10 going into halftime. This is going to be a different game. What does Ohio State do again? 14 straight points. Boom, boom, boom. Down the field. Will Howard, 24-29, 311 points, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Travion Henderson, 10 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. Quinshon Judkins, 10 carries, 34 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith, 6 catches, 103 yards, 2 touchdowns. Emeka Egbuka, 5 catches, 81 yards. But the reason why no one is saying this, going up in an uproar, is because it's an SEC team. And it's the hypocrisy in this. And I'm an SEC fan. I think SEC is the best conference in the world. But, like, you cannot let Tennessee get away with this when Indiana only lost by 10. Indiana, margin of, like, their loss was the smallest all weekend. Tennessee was up there with SMU, and arguably Tennessee played worse football because SMU turned the ball over 3 times. Tennessee couldn't even get the ball moving to turn over the ball that much. I mean, they were unable to. And yet everyone's beating on the table. The committee got it wrong. The committee got it wrong. SMU and Indiana didn't belong in it. Well, hello. What about Tennessee? They're the 9th seed, only playing the 8th seed. But these other teams were playing, Clemson, yes, they won their conference, but they're playing like the 5th seed. Notre Dame, top seed. Penn State, top seed. I mean, so explain that to me, how Tennessee gets away with that. And everyone's coming in. Neyland North, the fans are taking it over. And they got killed. I mean, this was, a beatdown. Like the meme that, Daddy, stop it. He's dead. He's dead. Tennessee was dead after that first quarter. They tried, and they came out in that second half, and when Ohio State marched down that field and scored, Tennessee was done. They were done. They tried to intimidate. Josh Heupel has taken on the mentality of the fans so much. He's trying to intimidate Ohio State by going shirtless in pregame. That did not work out well. Because they all sprint to the heated seats. And they're lathered in Vaseline, and they're talking about pregame. This looks like they have Vaseline on them. Isn't Vaseline supposed to keep you warm? To me, I just think Tennessee got outclassed. I think looking at these stats, dude, it's embarrassing. And you think, the defense, they had one pick. And let's be honest, miraculous pick. That was more luck than it was anything. So, again, this front seven for Ohio State bullied Tennessee more. It just didn't look good. It just did not look good at all. And I think that needed to be talked about more because this was supposed to be a good game. People were looking at Tennessee as national championship contenders. No one looked at Indiana, SMU as, national championship contenders. They thought, Cinderella story, they're going to win the first round, and then they're going to lose in the second round. But it's still going to be great. No, they lost. But you're looking at Tennessee as, Tennessee can run this table. What happened? Got killed. And now, if Ohio State shows up like this, if this is the version of Ohio State we get the rest of the season, they're the best team in the playoffs. Jeremiah Smith and Mecca Buka are an elite duo. And then, by the way, someone I'm high on, who is probably number 2 in the NFL when he goes, Cardinal Tate, they're number 3. And then you probably got one of the best running back duos, both guys who've ran for 1,000 yards in the past 2 years. They're splitting reps. 10 carries each. Christian Jenkins is the thumper. Trevion Henderson is the speedster. They're just thumping you. And Will Howard, if he plays efficiently, holy cow. And this front seven, they've got probably JT Tuimolo's going to go in the first 2 days. Caleb Downs going to be a first-round pick when he's taken. Latham Ransom could be a day 2 pick. Jack Sawyer is between a first and second rounder. Jeremiah Matthews is going to be a top 3-round pick. Tyler Williams, top 3-round pick. Looking at that, that's 6 guys on that defense. That's elite. Maybe Sony Styles too, but don't know much about him. That's an elite defense with an offense that can take the top off or just thump you. They can, whichever way you want it served, they'll give it to you. Do you want a burger or do you want a hot dog? Either one's gas. There's the off chance that they lose it. But I think Ryan Day, I said this to one of my friends. I said, James Franklin and Ryan Day are coaching for their jobs. I think James Franklin got more or less gifted the win. James Franklin took the soul out of it. Or Ryan Day. Ryan Day took the soul out of it. They beat the dog. I don't think no one wants to talk about it because it's Tennessee. And everyone's like, it's Tennessee. Everyone in the back of their mind thought Tennessee would do this. But, they had serious expectations. I mean, there's some of them who are like, yeah, wait, man, we're the best team in the SEC, even though they didn't play in their conference. And they got thumped. I mean, they got beat down. Because at least, everyone dogs on Indiana. And people say Indiana didn't belong in it. Maybe there's a little bit of an argument there. But again, I throw you Miami or South Carolina. Okay? Because Alabama got thumped. I'll talk about that in a minute. But, Indiana lost by 10 to Notre Dame. In Notre Dame. Right? Place that they did not take over in Notre Dame. Right? SMU loses by 28 to Penn State in a whiteout. SMU's never been this good, right? Okay? And Kevin Jennings, it's really that second quarter that where it all went downhill, right? But they played a good second half. Clemson and Texas, this was a good game. Tennessee took over the shoe and got killed, like in front of everybody. Explain that to me. Like, why is that not being talked about enough? Why are we crucifying Indiana for a 10-point loss away? And, calling for Kirk Cignetti's head when Tennessee took over Ohio State's home territory and still got destroyed. mollywopped. 104 yards passing. Under 50% completion percentage. Nico carried the ball 20 times. I still want to know why Dylan Sampson did not play. But back to this argument. Who are we going to put in over Indiana? Alabama? No. You lost a 6-6 Vanderbilt. You lost to a offensively anemic and archaic Oklahoma team who had one of the worst offensive teams I've ever watched play football. You barely beat South Carolina. Barely. By 3 points. I was a dogfight with Auburn for a bit. You mollywopped LSU, and then you lost to Tennessee. Their big wins where they mollywopped people were LSU and Alabama. They barely beat Georgia, which, if they don't beat Georgia, this is not a comment. They're 4 losses, and they are barely ranked. Barely. But that win over Georgia, which you take away the 30 points they scored in the first quarter, they get outscored 34-11, and it's a different outlook on this team. And I'm so tired of it because it's the name and it's the conference. But they did not handle business. And then you have Lane Kiffin running his mouth. Don't lose to Kentucky and don't lose to Florida. In embarrassing fashion. I forget who they lose to last. I think it's Florida. And you are controlling your own destiny. All you have to do is win out. And what do? You shit the bed. All you have to do is win out. And you fail. You lose to an LSU team by 3. You get beat by Kentucky by 3. And you're like, well, these are 3-point losses. They're also, 2 of them were at home. So what's your excuse there? Or one of them's at home. The Kentucky loss is at home. You're at Florida. Florida has no business beating you. There's 2 top receivers on that team. And Jackson Dart is supposed to be this great quarterback. There is no excuse. And then Lane Kiffin tweeting. I don't see Shane Beamer out here. I don't see Mario Cristobal out here tweeting. Mario Cristobal's team lost 1 or 2 games. They lost 2 games. And they didn't make it. But they're not out here tweeting. South Carolina, 2 of their losses are combined of 5 points. I don't see Shane Beamer out here tweeting, going nuts. They beat Clemson to end the year. They beat a Missouri team. They thumped a Vanderbilt team that beat Bama. They thumped an Oklahoma team that beat Bama. They lose to Bama by 2. They thumped a good Texas A&M team by 24. They did everything in their power to lose to LSU. They had so many chances to beat LSU, but they did everything in their power to lose to LSU by 3. They thumped Kentucky that beat Ole Miss. So what's the whole point? Why is it that we are looking at Bama because it's Bama? Nick Saban's not there. Sorry, he left. He retired. Milroe regressed. They've lost so many guys in the portal. This is not the same Bama. Stop trying to get them in because it's the name. Indiana did everything they were supposed to. Indiana's an SEC team, right? And take away, well, if this Indiana roster, no. If this Indiana team had the record they had in the SEC, hypothetically, there's no issue with it, even if they get thumped. They lost by 10. But even if they lost by 10, everyone was waiting for Indiana. They had an ugly first half. The box score says different. SMU, make an argument they shouldn't have been in because they got thumped. They were getting thumped in the first half of the ACC championship game, and they came back. They got thumped again. They did not come back. Okay? So it's just ridiculous. This whole thing, I mean, again, the committee got it right. The committee got it right. But that's my rant about that. I may record an episode Friday, but because Jaden Daniels went nuts yesterday, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Again, I think he put himself back in the Rookie of the Year thing. We're forcing Bo Nix down there. They're forcing Bo Nix down everybody's throat because Brock Bowers is having a generational year too. So I think it goes Jaden Daniels, Brock Bowers, then Bo Nix, or Brian Thomas, who is doing more with less catches with a backup quarterback. So, yeah, I go Jaden Daniels, Brock Bowers, Brian Thomas, Bo Nix. Because, yes, they've won games, but he's tried everything in his power to lose. But, again, it was a great weekend this past weekend for NFL. Some big things happened in NBA and MLB, but I mainly because of what everything's going on, I wanted to talk about the college football playoffs. But there might be another episode out later this week. Just depends how I'm feeling. But thank you for watching. Yeah. I, again, think the committee got it right. And if not, argue it with me.